What's up, everybody? This is Steven, aka Guitar Dork 864, and I've been getting a lot of questions recently about my Diary of Jane cover, how I got some of the sound on that. So I just figured I would make a really quick video and go over what I did. Hopefully that could help some of you guys. So usually when I'm doing productions, I actually quad track my guitars. I find that, it's thicker and a little bit punchier sometimes, but what I'm starting to find more and more is that just dual tracking is actually better, at least in my opinion. You can still get just as big of a sound, and it ends up being clearer and almost huger in the sense that the nuances of the playing, they come through in a way that just sounds larger. I don't know if that exactly makes sense, but to me, I'm just starting to prefer double tracking. And especially for a rock production like this, where the vocals need room to breathe, the bass needs room to come through, dual tracking is probably the best way to go. So start with the guitars. Actually, I'll start with the bass because the bass is really the foundation for the guitar tone. So first thing I do with my bass is I threw a little G clip on it. And those of you that don't know, G clip is a clipper that when you I'll go ahead and play this so I can show you what I'm talking about. These two lines right here, these white lines, everything that is going outside of these lines is basically just getting smashed. So this is really useful for when you're trying to make your track louder, and your transients, as they usually do, like your snare drum hit, are super loud and they're pumping your compressors. This helps to cut those a little bit. I'm using it here in a little different way. I'm using it to cut the transients on the bass track. After that, I'm setting it to a compressor that does a little more work on the transients. It's got fast attack, fast release, ratio of about 4. Threshold's going to have to be something you feel out on your own, because usually this is dependent upon the input level of the source audio. But for the purpose of what I'm doing here, you can never go wrong with setting it pretty high, because it's just trying to smash the DI for the bass. And this is the bass DI that we're working on right here. For those of you that don't know, DI is direct input track. Okay, I'm setting it to a master limiter, and I'm just trying to squash this whole thing even more. So I have, as you can see, the track gets up to around here, about -8 decibels. And the threshold here is about -14, and we're just trying to literally just squash the crap out of this track. And the reason I'm splitting this up into these 3 different steps is that each of these plugins is doing a slightly different thing, and the net result is just better than if I were to just throw the limiter on there and just literally smash it to hell. It would not be quite as clear. It would just sound a little bit too distorted. The next plugin I'm using here, this is the actual plugin that gives me the bass tone, Bass Overdrive by TSE, and this is literally the most awesome bass plugin I've ever used. Highly recommend it. You can get it for free. These are the settings I've got going on here. Level stays consistent. Blend is all the way on. Treble's at about the whatever the hell you call that, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1:30. Bass is in the same spot. Drive is not very high. Presence is turned up. I like my bass tracks to have presence. I like them to be resonating where the guitars ring. After that, I just have a little bit of EQ. I have a high pass at around 80. Bump around 1.5, bump at 3, and both of these bumps have a Q of about 7. So after that, let's go on to the guitars. So let's start with the left guitar. I've got TSE X50, which is a PV5150 amp sim. This is the best sounding PV5150 amp sim I've ever found. And what I've got going on here is I haven't changed anything up, except I put it in a high quality. When you're mixing, you're fine with low quality, and you want to probably keep it there because it's really CPU intensive. As you can tell, it's like eating up my clock cycles. I've got a pretty fast computer. Low is at about 4. Mids are turned down a little bit. Now I want to explain this mid setting a little bit. I know you hear over and over again that the guitars are a mid-range instrument, and they produce most of their frequencies in the mids. But for the purpose of recording, and this is not true of just only the Sims, but also real amps, at least the 5150 in my experience, the mid knobs, when you turn that up, you're not just increasing the audible mids, the good mids you want, that upper mid frequency, you're increasing the lower boxier mids that make your tone just heavy and claustrophobic. So I like to turn these down a little bit, turn the highs up, give it a lot of post gain. The higher the post gain setting, and this is in real life too, the louder the amp, generally the better the tone. So that's what's going on there. I've got my low end and presence turned to about 7. The low end is responsible for the clarity, not necessarily the volume, but the clarity of your low end. And the presence is the same for your high end. After that, I've got Pooling the Cab. And I'm using Recabinet Modern 1964 by 1257 package. And I have the EL3457 about a half inch away from the cap impulse. And this guy over here, so for impulses especially, and also for when you're dual tracking, impulses kind of have a tendency to sort of just sound a little plasticky and two-dimensional and fake on their own. So what this guy is doing over here is it's adding kind of a room resonance, just a hint of one, to the guitar tone, so it makes it sound just a little bit more real. It's a little subtle, it kind of goes in there and gives it that sound of being recorded in a real room. And I got this from a different impulse package, actually. I got this from some guy on the Ultimate Metal forum who graciously sampled his Mesa 4x12 cab, which is quite the awesome sounding cab, and its history speaks for itself as far as its use in metal recordings. So yeah, I got a U87, which is a condenser mic. This is the one I ended up using. I turned it down a little bit, and it adds that room presence while also kind of adding an airier high-end. Condensers generally pick up a better picture of the extreme high-end, so that's what's going on here. I got Waves C4, which is a multi-band compressor, which for those of you who don't know, a multi-band compressor is used to only compress a certain part of a signal, and here I've got it set from about 65 to 281 to compress those low mids out of the guitar tone. Those are the ones I was talking about earlier when I was on the amp sim. Those are not helping your guitar tone. Those are just making your mix claustrophobic. You want to get them out of there. Low pass at 15K. This can go anywhere from 12 to 15K. Sometimes the mix needs it to be lower. Sometimes you can put it higher. This sounded good for me here. And then my EQ, bunch of cuts. And these cuts, what I did is I slapped a frequency analyzer over the track, and that basically just produces a picture. I'll go ahead and show you. Throw that guy on there, and then if I'm playing the guitars, you can see where certain frequency peaks are in the signal. And all the cuts that I made here correspond to buildups in the low mids and the lows area. And those aren't important for the guitars. The guitar is not going to be really audible in that range anyways. So you can go ahead and try to cut those out. And what they'll do is they'll open your mix up. They'll give you room for the bass, et cetera, yada, yada. And then what I do is I have a boost around 1.5K, which I find sort of increases the clarity of the tone. And then a high shelf of about 5 starting at 6K. And that's all I did on the left guitar. Right guitar is more or less the same. I just use a different amp sim. I use the Nick Crow 7170, which is also a 5150 amp sim. This one sounds a little different. It's a little bit deeper and bassier, but that ends up working well in terms of at least my mix. I used another of the 1964 by 12 impulses. This one is the edge impulse, which means it's pointed at the edge right between the dust cap and the speaker paper, which I happen to find when I'm actually miking amps is like a really good spot to get a good tone. It's got high end of the high end of the cap. Well, it's got some of the body that you get from being away from the cap. And so yeah, got that. Same thing with the room impulse going on. Same thing with C4. For those of you who don't have this plugin, Reaper comes with the multi-band compressor. It's called Ria X Comp. You can use it to do the exact same thing. Low pass again at 15K, and the same story here. I made cuts. These ones are different because I have a different impulse and a different amp, but basic idea is the same. boost at 1.5K, and boost at, or high shelf at 6K. And that is what's going on with my guitar tone in this mix. And if you guys have any other questions or any other things that you want to know about, feel free to let me know, and I will do my best to answer them for you. All right, guys. Hope this was helpful. I will see you all later.